Hey everyone. So a few months ago, I made a video on how to achieve Daft Punk vocoder vocals using the Electrix WarpFactory. However, I've gotten a few comments asking me how the vocoder works and how to set it up properly. So today, I'm going to be showing you how the Electrix WarpFactory works and how to set it up. And before we get into this tutorial, you're going to want to make sure that you have a couple of things on hand. Of course, you're going to need this vocoder. You're going to need at least 3 TRS cables, and you're going to want an audio interface that has at least 4 external outputs which you can route audio through. So, with that out of the way, let's get into it. So this vocoder has 2 sides, the front panel and the back panel. The front panel allows you to do things like switch between inputs, control the character of the vocoder, and the output, while the back of the vocoder gives you access to the inputs and a couple of other things as well. But first, let's talk about the front panel. First thing you'll see on the very left of the vocoder is a microphone input. This input allows you to use an XLR microphone instead of sending modulator audio from something like a mixer or a DAW into the back of the vocoder. This can be useful when you're performing live or when you just want to play around with it. The gain, of course, controls the volume of the microphone. The select button allows you to switch between inputs. You can use the microphone input on the front, the inputs on the back, and auto, which routes the carrier input into the modulator input, so that the carrier is essentially vocoding itself. Next, we have a band selection button. This allows you to control the bias of the upper or lower harmonics of the source. If you choose the high setting, it's going to have a lot more treble and sound kind of like a talk box in a way. If you choose the low setting, it's going to be more full and rich. I find that this is better for vocals in most cases. The gender knob acts as a formant control, so you can make your voice sound higher or deeper without changing the pitch. The Q knob controls the resonance of the filters, turning it all the way clockwise will make it sound super robotic or alien-like, while having it all the way counterclockwise will have a neutral sound. The order knob controls the resolution of the vocoder. If you have it turned all the way clockwise, it'll sound very blocky and hard to understand, but if you have it turned all the way counterclockwise, it'll sound clear and intelligible. The pitch knob controls the internal pulse generator built into the vocoder. Turning it all the way clockwise will generate a high-pitched saw wave, while turning it all the way counterclockwise will have it off. If you slowly move it up, it'll start from low to high in pitch. The same principles apply to the mix knob, or the noise knob. Basically, it introduces white noise. If you have it turned all the way counterclockwise, there will be no noise, while if you have it turned all the way clockwise, the carrier signal will be replaced with 100% white noise. The freeze button freezes the last spoken formant, so if you were to say a vowel like A, E, I, O, or U, it would freeze on that. And if you press the button again, it'll return back to normal vocoding mode. Effect mix is pretty much just a dry wet control for the vocoded output, so if you have it turned all the way to the left, it'll be dry, and if you have it turned all the way to the right, it'll be fully wet. Source kill was a bit weird for me to understand at first, but pretty much it acts as a gate. It stops any signal from being vocoded when you're not speaking. And bypass bypasses the effect altogether. So that's it for the front of the vocoder. Now let's go over the back of the vocoder. First, we have a foot switch input, which allows you to control the bypass of the vocoder with a foot switch. We also have MIDI inputs and outputs, which allow you to control multiple parameters on the vocoder through MIDI CC. You can read more about this in the manual. I'll have it in the description below. The effect outputs output the vocoded signal. The source inputs take in the carrier signal, which can be a synth or any audio source. And the formant input, which you'll note only has one input, controls the modulator. Typically, most vocoders only take in a mono signal for vocals because most vocals are recorded in mono only. However, this vocoder does have support for stereo output. So if you were to use a supersaw as a carrier source, it will not be mixed down to mono, but will be outputted in full stereo sound. It's only the modulator signal that comes in as mono. And finally, we have the mic bypass, which allows you to bypass your microphone signal if you're using a mixer. You can read more about this and how it works in the manual, as I said before, which will be in the description. Alright, so now that we know what each parameter of the vocoder does, let's get into how we can set it up. There's a few ways you can set up the vocoder. One way is to connect your XLR microphone into the front panel and a synth into the back carrier input. Or you can also send a synthesizer or carrier signal from your DAW into the back of the vocoder as a source as well. I'll tell you how to do this in a minute. When using your mic as a modulator input, you'll want to make sure that the signal is staying somewhat in the yellow-green area and it's not clipping in the red. Another way you can use this vocoder, which is the way that I do it, is send a modulator and carrier signal from your DAW or digital audio workstation out from your interface into the vocoder. I like using this method because not only do you have more control over the modulator signal and carrier signal, but if you don't have a hardware synthesizer, this is the best way to use the vocoder. Most digital audio workstations handle routing audio differently from one another, but most typically follow the same principles. I'm going to be showing you how to do this in Reaper. What you want to do is click the routing button on your modulator or carrier track, then click hardware outputs and send it to whichever output you're using for the modulator or carrier signal. On my interface, I have 4 external outputs on the back. Typically, I send the modulator signal through output 3 and the carrier signal through output 4. Also, make sure that they don't send to the master track. Now that you're sending the signals out of your interface, let's plug them into the vocoder. It's good to have multicolored TRS cables to make sure that you don't get confused with the signals. I'm using an orange cable for the modulator and a gray cable for the carrier. Now that you've got that done, make sure you have an extra TRS cable to plug into the output, which you then send into one of the inputs on your interface. Now, if you insert a new track and set it to the vocoder's input, and you have all 3 tracks armed or monitored for recording, you should be able to hear a vocoded signal if you play on the keyboard and speak into the microphone. So that's pretty much it. If you want to learn how to achieve Daft Punk style vocals with the Electrix WarpFactory, I've already got a video on how to do that. But with all that being said, hope this was helpful, and I'll see you all next time.